Okay, now that we have learned the basic vocabulary for a circle, today we are going to focus on the equation of a circle. When we were in way back when in Algebra 1 class, we learned the equation of a line. And even in this class, we reviewed that equation of a line when we talked about parallel and perpendicular lines. In this case, it's a circle, not a line, but similar to the line, it has its own standard form. And I want to highlight that because every equation of a circle has its own standard form. And I'm going to write that here in the box. I would like you to do the same. I'm going to have to kind of write a little bit small. And that is a squared term. I know we've had something like that before get confusing. We are not multiplying by 2. We are raising it to the second power. We are squaring it. So the way this reads is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Now, when we talked about the equation of a line, remember, we had this. We had the y and we had the x, and they always stayed that way. But the thing that changed was the m and the b. And so if we knew the slope, we could pull that off of the equation of the line, or we could put that into the equation of a line. And the b was the y-intercept. So it had these, I'm not sure what you want to call them. It had these parameters that can change depending on the line. Well, this is a circle, but it does have some similarities. The circle has, the equation has some parts that change depending on the circle. And so when we write our equation of the circle, it's going to be really helpful to have those two things. And if you read here, it says the standard form of the equation of a circle with center at h comma k and radius r is this thing we just wrote. So the center is an ordered pair. It has an x coordinate that they call h, and it has a y coordinate that they call k. And we could, when we look at the graph, we could put that on a graph, or we could look at the picture of a circle and read that center point off of the graph. The other thing that it includes is the radius r. Now remember from our previous video, the radius is from the center to an edge, like that yellow line that I just highlighted. The radius is the same anywhere I draw it in a particular circle, but it can be different for different circles. So this distance r is what's going to be here, only we're going to square it. Okay, so there are two things that we absolutely need to know in order to write the equation. We need the center point, and we need the radius. And that's a length. How long is that radius? If we have those two things, then this job is relatively easy. So let's take a look at an example. At part 1, it says write an equation using the center and radius. Write the equation of each circle. Well, here it gives us exactly what we need. We have a center point, h, k, and we have a radius, r. So we have the best situation possible. Now, what I like to do, I don't know if you guys remember way back in the SOHCAHTOA unit, you know how I like to write SOHCAHTOA all the time? Well, Mrs. Lucas likes to also write the equation of circle all the time. So she's going to start with that. And I'm going to write this down, if I can write it neatly. And I'm going to label what I know. So this radius of 7, that is my R. That's going to go here. We're going to substitute. The center point has an H and it has a K. So we're going to substitute. We're going to substitute. So we're going to be substituting 3 pieces of information into our standard form. And it looks like this. I'm still going to have an X. I'm still going to have a minus because that's what the equation looks like. But instead of an H, I'm going to substitute a 1 plus. Now a Y, a minus. Now look at my K. My K is -8. Equals, and then my R value. Well, it's R, but it's squared. So we are almost done writing the equation of the circle, believe it or not. The only thing that we have to do is we have to deal with this, with the double negative. When I subtract a negative, that becomes a positive. And when I take 7 and I square it, that's like saying 7 times 7. So that's 49. So we are done. We have done what they asked us to do. We have written the equation of a circle. Now notice what happened. Just take a step back from it and take a look. Remember, this started out being a 1. But what does it look like when it's in the equation? Do you see how it looks negative? It has a minus sign in front of it. And look at this. This started out as a negative, but what does it look like in the equation? It looks like it's positive. So when we put something into the equation or take it out of the equation for the center point, it's going to appear, it isn't really changing sign, but it's going to appear that the sign changes because our standard form has these negative signs in it. And what those negative signs are doing is they are causing it to look as if the center point has flipped its sign. And that's an interesting thing. We're going to need that in a little bit. So I'm just going to fill this in. This is our 1, -8. That was this information. And our radius was 7. Now, the one thing that I would like to do before I finish the video, and this is not in your notes, give me just 1 second, because I'd like to pull up the Desmos calculator, and I'm going to do this in class. But I want to show it to you so that you have it in the video in case you ever need to refer back to it. Almost there. And I'm going to fix my graph just a little bit. Let's zoom out just a little bit. Okay, there we go. So now if I look at this graph of a circle, where's my center? It's somewhere here, right? Somewhere in the center. But remember, they told me that my center point was 1, -8. So let's go check that out. 1, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to put, yeah, right there. Does that look like it's in the center? It really does. It looks like it's in the center. So it's very possible that I did this correctly. So from that point, let's count the radius and see if it's 7. 1 point, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our radius is 7. And we have written the equation correctly. We have the circle with a center of 1, -8 and a radius of 7. So when we come back together here in just a moment, we will be here on page 4, and we're going to practice a few more together. Then we will practice, and we'll go backwards. Eventually, we're going to go backwards. And we're going to take the equation and figure out what the center and the radius were. But for now, we'll wrap up the video with this information that we learned. Hopefully you got all that written down, and then we will practice a few together. Thanks, guys.